Hey everyone, Lewis aka Spider-Man 1991 here with another vlog type video. The inspiration for this video came from a podcast I listened to called Geek History Lesson. It's a podcast where they kind of explain origins and history behind a certain figure of pop culture, from comics, TV shows, movies. And in one episode, they decided the hosts, Ashley, Victoria Robinson, and Jason Inman, decided to answer a fan question that they got on Twitter, which was, if you could recommend 5 comic books, what could it be? So they decided to each make a list of 5 comics that they could recommend, but they had rules behind them for each slot on the list that you could choose. Basically, the rules are you choose 5 comics, but one comic has to be published by DC Comics, the other one comic has to be published by Marvel, another has to be published from an independent publisher. Fourth, a comic published before 1990, and the last one is basically a wild card, which is pretty much anything you want. So I thought this was a fun. So I liked listening to the Geek History Lessons lists of top 5 comics, and it was a good list. And I thought, this is a good idea this is actually a really cool list idea. So I decided to do it for a video. So here are my choice for 5 comics every fan should read. Let's get started. Alright, starting off the list, I'm going to go with my pick for my DC comic. And this was something I was debating about what to do, because I was thinking of a Batman story, but I thought, it's DC, everyone picks Batman. So ultimately I decided to go with a Justice League story that is a bit more Batman focused. And that story is JLA, Tower of Babel. Now, in the story, basically Ra's al Ghul enacts a plan to reduce the world's population. And of course, in order to make sure the Justice League doesn't interfere, he enacts several traps to prevent the JLA from taking any action. And during the story, we find out that the plans that Ra's used to stop each member of the League were all designed by Batman. And Ra's got them from sending Talia into hacking into the Bat computer and downloading them. And at the end of the story, and during the story, Batman reveals to them that he's the one who thought of all of these plans, and just in case any member of the League went rogue and they had to stop someone. And ultimately, though, even though they defeat Ra's al Ghul, the League is pretty much divided, and all the remaining members of the League are pretty much debating whether they should kick Batman out or have him stay. And the League is pretty divided until the deciding vote comes down to Superman. But before Superman can actually say his decision, Batman has left the Watchtower. Alright. The story isn't, like I said earlier, this isn't just a great Justice League story, it's also a really good Batman story, because Mark Waid does an excellent job showing Batman's paranoia as well as his superior strategic planning. I mean, Batman, he's a strategist, and he prepares for every scenario, even though that may seem a bit paranoid. In this case, in case every member of the JLA ever turns out to be evil. And the final scene, and probably my favorite scene in this story, is the ending, the final scene on the Watchtower, where we have each member of the League pretty much saying their vote whether Batman should stay or should he leave. And and everyone does make a lot of good points. Even Martian Manhunter, who like Batman, did keep files on weaknesses back in the days of the Justice League Detroit. And Martian Manhunter admits that, even though these plans were used against us, he would be a hypocrite if he didn't vote, if he voted for Batman's expulsion. So Martian Manhunter was kind of on Batman's side. So yeah, really, this is a fantastic story. It's one of my favorite Justice League stories, and that's why it's on this list. You can find this story arc digitally, of course, but you can also find it in the paperback as part of the JLA Deluxe Edition line, specifically Volume 4. That's where it's collected in, so check it out. Okay, now it's time for my Marvel pick, and if you watch my videos a lot, you know that my favorite Marvel character is, of course, Spider-Man. So naturally, you should know that I am definitely going to pick a Spider-Man story, but the actual pick may surprise you, because I'm going with Superior Spider-Man. Yeah, basically if you don't know by now, basically, Superior Spider-Man is about what happens when Dr. Octopus uses his last few days on Earth to switch bodies with Peter Parker. And in doing so, when Peter tries to use Otto's dying body to try to switch back and he gets close, he fails. And when Peter's life flashes before his eyes, Otto still experiences it because the connection between their minds is still open. And when Otto experiences this, he kind of like realizes that, oh my God, being Spider-Man isn't just... kind of realizes that being Spider-Man, it does have great power, but it also has great responsibility. So after Peter dies, Otto pretty much promises to carry on his legacy as Spider-Man, but this time he's going to do it his way, which he deems to be the superior way. And of course, Otto does a lot of things that Peter never did, such as go back to school and get Peter's doctorate. He starts his own company, and he also uses different tactics as Spider-Man, such as creating small spider bots that he pretty much lets loose on the entire city so that he can focus on more bigger threats and leave all the spider bots to detect any sort of minor threats such as fires, muggings, and immediately report it to the proper authorities. However, Otto's Achilles heel is his own arrogance, and this arrogance is exploited by Norman Osborn when he returns as the Goblin King. So that's pretty much what happens in the series. By the way, I'm not recommending a particular arc. I'm recommending the entire Superior Spider-Man series. That's my suggestion for this. Now, when the truth behind Superior Spider-Man was revealed, that it wasn't going to be Peter Parker, it was going to be Dr. Octopus, that got a lot of controversy. Especially when they announced that it wasn't going to be Peter Parker, but then they find out that Peter's going to die, but not as Peter Parker, but as in Dr. Octopus's body, and that the villain would pretty much win and take over as the hero. I mean, there was a lot of controversy behind it when it was announced, when it was revealed officially in Amazing Spider-Man 700. That's when the last 3 issues of the first volume of Amazing Spider-Man, that's when the actual switch took place, and there was like huge negative responses. The writer Dan Slott got tons of death threats on Twitter. There was also apparently one video of someone taking a copy of Amazing Spider-Man 700 and lighting it on fire. Overall, I know the concept of this series is a little gimmicky. You know, supervillain defeats the hero and takes over his identity, but it is impressive how it gives a former supervillain the second chance at being a hero. But in order for him to live, he has to continue to live up to the expectations set by this hero. And in a lot of ways, Otto does surpass Peter, maybe intellectually, maybe in terms of equipment, but as a person, he's not exactly in the same ballpark as Pete. But overall, it's a Superior Spider-Man. It's a fantastic series. I read this when it came out monthly, and I loved every issue of it. I did. You can go back and watch when I did weekly reviews. I always loved Superior Spider-Man. That was always my top recommendation. The best way that you can read the series now is either digitally or in the collected editions, either paperback or hardcover. But I will say the hardcover might be a little more bang for your buck because the first volume, Superior Spider-Man hardcover volume, includes the last 3 Amazing Spider-Man issues, which is the arc known as Dying Wish. But, you know, if paperback's more your speed, that's fine. Just go out and read this series because it is amazing. Okay, just like my Marvel pick, my choice for an independent comic shouldn't really be much of a surprise if you've been a long-time subscriber to my channel, because my indie pick is Invincible from Image Comics. I love this series a lot. The star of the title, Mark Grayson, he is the son of a famous superhero known as Omni-Man, who is also an alien, so Mark is technically half alien, of the species known as the Viltrumites. And Mark's life pretty much changes forever when he finally gets his superpowers and decides to become a superhero like his dad. However, very early in Mark's career, he starts to realize that being a superhero isn't exactly as glamorous or as nice as seen in all the comic books he's read. So, and there's a lot, and right now, starting this fall, will be Invincible's last story arc, and I'm very sad to see it end. But hey, you know, it's still an amazing series, and I just hope Robert Kirkman can give it a good send off. I do like this series a lot. As a guy who reads a lot of Marvel and DC comics, the cool thing about this story is that it's a unique superhero series that doesn't suffer from a lot of status quo resets that Marvel and DC do. I mean, things happen in this universe that stay stuck. Like, characters die, they don't come back. Whenever something big happens, it's not just, okay, we can move on, get back to normal. No, it impacts them. The characters are impacted by that. They remember it, and changes them. In fact, there was a story arc they did called Reboot, where Mark actually went back in time. Sort of, his mind went back in time to his younger body, back to issue 1, and he did things differently. And he did have the opportunity to sort of reboot his universe, but he refused. So really, this is a fantastic, amazing superhero book. It doesn't suffer from all the status quos that a lot of mainstream superhero titles suffer. I think that if you're a longtime reader of superhero comics, you should definitely check out and start reading Invincible, because it's great. It's also, I will say this, it's for mature readers. There are a lot of bloody scenes in this, so if you are a mature reader and if you liked superheroes as a kid but you kind of moved away from that genre, I guarantee you Invincible will help get your love of the superhero genre back. Okay, for my comic published before 1990, there are a lot of good comic book stories out there. A lot of them published before 1990. That was something I had to go back and forth on. It was a hard choice, but I think ultimately I went with the right one. Green Lantern, Green Arrow by Dennis O'Neil and Neil Adams. Now, Adams and O'Neil pretty much took over the Green Lantern title, and at this time it wasn't doing so hot. So they decided to add Green Arrow as Green Lantern's co-star, and for their big opening story arc, they had Green Lantern and Green Arrow deciding to go on a road trip across America in order to help sort of get back in touch, in order for Green Lantern to sort of get back in touch with Earth after being off-world for so long. And this was also at the time where Green Arrow was pretty much was given a soft reboot and written as more of a lefty Democrat. Now, pretty much the Emerald Knights did go off and dealt with issues that were affecting America at the time, such as racism, pollution, drugs, and speaking of and for the drug part, this is actually the run that features the story that revealed Speedy Roy Harper as a heroin addict, and also during O'Neil and Adams' run, that also includes the first appearance of Jon Stewart. So a lot of memorable things did happen during this run. The relationship between Hal Jordan and Oliver Queen is interesting, displayed in this series, as Queen calls for radical change, but Jordan still believes that change should come through the proper channels and institutions such as... I mean, there's a really good story that does illustrate the different view, how Hal and Oliver do want the same thing, but they're willing to go through completely different methods. The combination of O'Neil's writing and Adams' artwork really do create a very powerful set of stories that will leave any reader feeling impacted. I mean, as soon as I was done reading this, it got me thinking about a lot of stuff. And also the series this run has also been critically acclaimed a lot. You look on a lot of top comic book lists, and this is usually on there, which makes sense. These are very powerful stories. I mean, a lot of them do, even though there is one story that does feature Lantern and Arrow going off planet, most of them do take place on Earth. And I think I like Green Lantern. It's just sometimes when you put him back on Earth after he's been in space for so long, it is pretty interesting. And that's what you get with this series. Overall, it's a very fantastic set of stories. Stories very topical at the time, and that is why it is on my list. Okay, now it's time for the wild card, which is pretty much anything the list maker wants to add to this list. For me, I'm going to go with Superboy, Smallville Attacks. Now, the reason I went with it, I decided to add this to my list, is because this version of Superboy, Connor Kent, before the New 52, is my favorite version of the character. Like, pretty much the era between starting with Jeff Johns' Teen Titans and the solo series written by Jeff Lemire. To me, that is my favorite era of Connor Kent. And the Jeff Johns Superboy stories are good, but a lot of them did have Superboy focused on how he was going to turn out due to his relationship due to how he's a half clone of Superman and a half clone of Lex Luthor, and how he could either be the greatest hero or the greatest villain. But Lemire's story, but thankfully before this series started, John's kind of resolved that whole issue, and Jeff Lemire's story is a lot more focused on the Boy of Steel's life in Smallville, and it's really great. Jeff Lemire gives us a really good supporting cast for Superboy, and he also creates a very excellent backstory to Smallville that does create a sort of horror story for this as the story progresses. And and also Jeff Lemire, when he writes Superboy, he makes him a lot more humbled and more focused on doing the right thing and keeping Smallville safe. I mean, because when Superboy reappeared in Teen Titans, he did not like Smallville. He was not a big fan of Smallville. He wanted to get to the towers whenever he could. But in this series, he's a lot more comfortable in Smallville now. In fact, even in the opening, he even states that Smallville is kind of his home now, and he wants to make the best of it. And by the end of the series, he thinks about it and says, firmly, Smallville is my home, which is very nice. It shows a great evolution of the Superboy character. I mean, if you read any issue where Superboy first appeared after Death of Superman, he was a pretty arrogant kid, but now when you read this, he's like a lot more mature, a lot more humble. I mean, it really is a great evolution for the character. I mean, and yeah, he's a clone of Superman, but he's a really great character in his own right, and it sucks that the New 52 ruined that for this version of the character, but really, he got another shot at a solo series after a lot of positive response went from his appearance in Teen Titans, and it is a very good series, and that is why I highly recommend you should read this. So that concludes my list of 5 comic books every fan should read. What do you guys think? Do you agree or disagree? What do you guys have? Do you guys have any other recommendations that you think fans should read? I reposted the rules should be reposted in the video description. If you want to make your own list in the comments, let me know. If you like this video, please check out my other videos, subscribe to my channel, like this video, yada yada yada. Anyways, thanks again for watching. I'm Spider-Man 1991. Have a nice day.